Good morning, everyone. I'm super excited to have Anish Kulkarni today with us as a part of our alumni series. And I welcome Anish, and I am thankful that you have taken out time to do this with us today. Anish, if you could please take this forward and introduce yourself to our viewers.
Okay, great. Thank you. Super excited to be here. Thanks, Gunjan, for inviting me. Hi, everyone. This is Anish Kulkarni. I did mechanical engineering from IIT Bombay, graduated in 2022, and spent the last 4 years across roles in product supply and R&D. I started out as a process engineer and then a line leader in the Hyderabad manufacturing plant, manufacturing the baby diapers brand called Pampers. And then from there, I moved closer to the consumer, did consumer research for Pampers itself as part of India R&D in Mumbai. I have a round two admit from Harvard Business School where I'll be heading for an MBA.
Congratulations. And Anish, so we have divided this chat into various sections. We'll start with the first section, which is your story. Was pursuing an MBA always a part of your plan?
Not exactly. Initially, so I had a 5 year degree in IIT Bombay where I was doing bachelor's and master's, and my initial plan was to maybe pursue a PhD, maybe in a field like robotics. But during my placements, I got a job at P&G, and then I decided to give it a shot and ended up loving it. So I always had this desire for a global education, but then the fixation of an MBA came when actually two things happened together. First, when I had moved to the role in R&D, which was closer to marketing, sales,
Hmm.
operations, when we were doing new product launches, made me I had this deep curiosity to then maybe move into brand building and broader business strategy. So that was first thing. Also, maybe connecting with a lot of other brand owners, which is like Whisper, Wix, Head and Shoulders, Tide. There was just this deep curiosity which got settled into me about getting into broader business strategy. And also, secondly, the validation. So I know a few IIT Bombay folks and alumni from P&G itself who have pursued MBAs abroad. And speaking with all of them, each and everyone had an excellent experience, which had broadened their lens and their personality on impact and leadership. So these two things came together. And there's also a fun anecdote which I'd like to share. So back in 2021, I was backpacking across Spain, and there was the only other Indian in that hostel. And turns out he was from my same school back in Nasik. And then
Okay.
he had done a Kellogg MBA, so that was like my first exposure to meeting someone who has done an MBA. And then speaking with him, hearing his story and his career progression was really inspiring as well. So that also kind of had sparked that seed of doing a global MBA. So ultimately, it became like the intersection of my professional curiosity and also something of a personal inspiration. And then I decided to apply.
Right. No, it's always good when, the desire to do an MBA is organic and not just driven by the prestige of the degree or, what the degree brings in immediately after graduation. So I'm glad to hear that story, and I'm sure that a lot of viewers would connect with that from PhD in robotics to an MBA at Harvard Business School. That is life, isn't it? What during the process, right? What were some of the biggest insecurities or doubts that you had?
Uh, I think these are the most common doubts which I am sure everyone would be facing. Two doubts is, am I good enough for this? And number two, even if I get in, how will I be able to manage the finances? And then
Mhm.
that's where I think I decided to maybe make that conscious choice of not worrying about uh, will this work out, and I also won't be able to influence the tuition costs, right? So just stop worrying about the odds and just focus on putting my best self. So yeah, that's what it, that it that's what it was.
Right. Could you elaborate on not good enough, right? You said that, am I good enough? Or could you elaborate on that insecurity, please?
Yes. So again, I think it's everyone knows that these MBA programs are very competitive and a lot of brilliant people apply. Also, being from India, the competition is just much higher. I'm sure there are a lot of brilliant people who apply. And even now that I know the people I would be going to class with, all of them are very stellar individuals, great careers, great undergrad and great experiences. Uh, so somewhere that insecurity comes in of whether the experiences I have lived are enough to compete with them on a global stage. Uh, India also being competitive, the acceptance rates are the lowest over here. So those stats kind of make you feel overwhelmed with the possibility. So you'd put in too much effort, but then will it even reap any fruit? So that's what was the most caring part. And second, of course, the finances, because these education, these programs are extremely expensive, and if you don't have a scholarship or you don't have enough savings, it can also dent a huge financial impact. And then you would have to think about ROI and how you would be able to repay the loan back. So these two were the biggest insecurities.
Great. So just to let our viewers know a little anecdote about Anish. When he came to me, it was like he was living, breathing, imagining HBS. Because every time I think when we were, let's say, brainstorming on some other college, also he would just come back and say by mistake he would just mention HBS. So even if the essay that we were brainstorming on was not on HBS, so that only shows that while you had these insecurities, you were also dreaming big and like literally living that, trying to live that dream every day. So it's really a very inspirational story, I would say, Anish, because honestly I didn't know that you really had that insecurity, and now that you're mentioning, I get to know a little more about you. So great, we'll move to section 2 now, which is on GMAT, GRE and academic. So which test did you take, Anish, if you could let our viewers know?
Yes, I did the GMAT focus
GMAT.
edition.
Okay. And what was your test taking strategy? Any top tips that you can share?
Sure. So I think I can speak broadly for someone who's from an engineering background like me. Quant was something which was very natural to me, and I faced a lot of difficulty in the verbal problems. So because I've done JE before, quant was something which flowed naturally. And then verbal, the struggle which I had to overcome was having this brain fog in the middle of maybe reading a passage, or then maybe doing like a few questions after that. And you have this brain fog where it's just really hard to push through and then comprehend what you're reading and then actually soak it in to answer. So that was the biggest challenge which I faced. And think what worked for me is these long study sessions. So I used to sit continuously for like 4 hours, take a 10-minute break, go back at it again. And doing that helped me kind of bring in that marathon mindset in if I have a brain fog, then can I take a sip of water and then push through? And then
Hmm.
doing that continuously built in that capacity to even reach like the end of the entire section being fully alert. I'm sure a lot of people are also facing this. And I had read somewhere about the neuroplasticity of brain. So they rise up to how you train them. So this is like when well, let's say you're into running, then how do you improve your capacities? Only by running past your breaking point. So that is also how our brains are wired. And then that's how I kind of prepared for verbal. And then after about a month or so, I decided to let's just give it a shot. And I had thought that this would be kind of like a testing practice for my first attempt. And then learning from this attempt, I would take another month to prepare completely and then give the GMAT again. But in the first no pressure GMAT itself, I got a 725. I got a verbal 85, a DI 83, and a quant 90. And then my overall score was 99 percentile on this trial attempt. And then from there, I knew maybe I could improve this further by improving my verbal, by improving my DI. But then I think beyond the score, the advice I received from you and other folks is that I think beyond this point, your essays carry more importance. So I did not take it the second time.
Right. No, and pushing your limits via techniques is great advice, Anish. I'm sure that, in everything that we're doing, it's all about, how do you walk past where you are at to reach the next level. And having a technique in place, like how you said, right, just sipping water is definitely
Yeah.
something that can help you get that breakthrough. We'll now move to section 3, which is on essays and personal branding. What did the introspection process, like our GTKY, the get to know yourself document that you filled up at the initial stages, teach you about yourself?
Yeah, I think not to be honest, it was a really an eye-opening experience. in your daily life, and then there's just so many things happening, so many problems are solving, and then moving on to the next one. You rarely take a pause to think about why you took a decision or why you made a certain choice. Uh,
Mm.
so writing the essays forced me to look back. I think the entire process which Red Pen has was extremely structured and really helped me kind of break it down and then convert these into these snips of my impact and how I had performed, how I had taken a decision in a challenging situation. Uh, so uncovering the entire career which I have had through the GTKY, through the star stories, through the final essays, it really made me appreciate my experience, my experiences, and the leader I had shaped to be. And now that I also know some of my classmates, I realize that your professional journey has a big impact on your own personality. So I think the
Mm.
Anish which had joined in 2022 was not the Anish who came out graduated out of P&G in 2026. And then each and every experience kind of shapes and molds you. And I could just be very appreciative and really grateful for all the opportunities I have had and for the impact I have created in my work through this process, through the introspection process.
Great. And what mistakes do you think applicants commonly make in essays? Like if you're working with, your peers or somebody and you see that common mistakes.
Uh, so I think the biggest challenge is everyone tries to overthink what the admission committee wants to hear.
Mm.
And then, but the greatest advice and the coaching which I've received was to be as authentic as possible because that's the only thing the admissions committee cares about. Me coming from a non-traditional background, it was even more important for me because I did not fit into the general clique of an Indian MBA applicant. Uh, and then your experiences are what make you unique. So at the end of the day, that's the only thing uh, the committee cares about. So just stop overthinking about what they want to hear and start being more heads-on with what you are, what your life has been, and how you have shaped as a leader.
Right. And how important do you think is storytelling in the entire application process?
So storytelling is also extremely important because it bridges the gap between your resume points and puts you across as an individual, as a person who has had these experiences. So I feel like that behind every underlying decision, your motivation, your personality, there is uh, some inherent qualities which make you pursue something, fight something, challenge
Mhm.
something, uh, and also create an impact. So, uncovering that through a story is what actually brings you closer to your authenticity, and that's exactly what can make your life feel cohesive and you feel true to yourself. So, storytelling is a big part of applications, and I would, and introspection is also connected very deeply with it. Yeah.
Right. And let's talk about career goals because that's one of the very important parts of the application as well, right? So, did your career goals evolve during the process?
Yeah, very definitely. As in, speaking with alumni and the current MBA students, it helped me refine my path, especially as I primarily look to move from execution to broader strategy. There are subtle job nuances which you can only get to know after speaking with the current students and alumni. So they can even only understand them through someone else's lived experiences. Also, there's a nuance to being an international to being an Indian because there's also a feeling of maybe also coming back to India. And all of those things you can only uncover once you speak with alumni. So they did evolve. I had gone in with kind of a blurred image of what I wanted to do, but then after having this discussion, after having this process go through, I kind of now have a much clearer path on what I want to do.
Right. And could you let our viewers know how did you go about making these connections with students and alums? Like, what was your process?
Uh, It was cold calls basically. So through my friends from IIT Bombay, through my friends from P&G, I kind of knew a few folks who had also gone to Harvard Business School, also done other MBAs. So I
Hmm.
immediately reached out to them on WhatsApp. And then LinkedIn was the other biggest source of where I could connect with people. So doing all, hey, I'm thinking of applying for an MBA. I'm having these doubts. Maybe connect for a 15-minute chat, or if we can even just text on WhatsApp or something. So speak with as many people as you can. Each and every conversation will be really helpful because you get understand what they have themselves gone through because they were in your exact shoes few years back. So trust this process and this reach out to uh, be enough for you to kind of explain or to for you to build more confidence and faith in your own story. So that will be helpful. So I think the biggest ways I reached out was through calls or WhatsApp and through LinkedIn.
Great. We'll move to section 4, which is on consultant experience. What difference did structured mentorship make during the process for you?
Uh, oh, the application journey, to be honest, is very taxing. I was also traveling a lot during this time, and then having this structure in place, having deadlines set with your Gunjan really made all the difference. To be honest, you took this big and overwhelming undertaking, and then converted it into a very manageable and structured process. And then even when I was falling behind, the constant check-ins and this structure were the anchor which kept the process moving. So it can get tough, especially as to someone who's hearing this, when you're balancing a very demanding career with applications, it can easily feel very daunting. And then even my work, it required continuous travels. I was just looking back, and I had taken from the time application started around October until March when the results came out, I had taken close to 40 flights across
Wow.
India, across three countries. And then there was just a lot happening in my work as well. And then managing all of that, performing extremely well at it, and doing these applications. Uh, it would really help to have a structure in place and someone who is kind of your anchor. So that was you. So thanks a lot again, Kunjan, for that.
What surprised you most about working with a consultant?
So the biggest surprise, honestly, was your genuine investment in my success.
Okay.
I had heard a lot of scam stories about a lot of my friends having very bad experiences with their consultants. Their consultants only putting like AI edits to their essays,
Mhm.
ignoring them around deadlines. But you actually went above and beyond during the end of the applications where everything was in a lot of hurry. Even during the times I was not able to meet at the internet deadline we had, you were extremely patient with me. And then I remember this one moment also where we had done a few reviews on an HBS essay. And then I just wanted to tear all of it up and start from scratch again in a completely different vertical. But instead of getting frustrated, you actually heard me out and helped me rebuild. So, yeah, I think Red Pen and having you as a consultant was one of the best decisions I took during this process.
Thank you so much, Anish, for that endorsement. How important was accountability during the process?
No, accountability is everything. As I told you, we had a demanding job. With doing
Yeah.
that with applications is really exhausting, and it's very easy to make excuses when you're tired. Having someone externally accountable meant that even after a long day, I would actually want to sit down and work on my applications, write some essays, do some coffee chats, connect with some of my peers, because I had an internal deadline in place which I really wanted to meet.
Mm.
So the accountability loops which I had had with Red Pen helped me kind of build the daily discipline required to actually make the application come together as a whole.
Great. Now we'll move to section 5, which is on the interview experience. If you could let the viewers know about your HBS interview experience.
Yes, so for everyone who maybe hasn't heard this before, or maybe you have, the HBS interview experience is like very, very intense experience. And I had heard this from all of the people who had gone through this. And then I also am kind of adding on to that because it really is something very intense. I opted to do the in-person interview in Mumbai. I would recommend if there's an option to do that again. The
Mm.
conversation was incredibly fast-paced. Uh, the interviewer knows your application thoroughly. They know your resume thoroughly. They have a lot of understanding about India and the Indian job market, the Indian consumer. And they didn't want just surface level answers. They really were like getting deep into detail of manufacturing. I remember explaining a mechanical engineering concept and then how that was used in solving a problem back when I was in manufacturing. And then also looking at the Indian consumer and then having nuances about uh, a villager who is maybe having 10 rupees in their pocket. So I think they really want a very detailed perspective which you had and the impact which you brought in. It really tested how well I know the core of my daily work uh, because of the detail which they had gone through. I think usually it was around 20 to 30 questions which they go through in a span of 30 minutes. So you can imagine it's really, really intense. Uh,
Intense.
and yeah, I think there's no best way to prepare it unless maybe you do some mocks. But yeah, that's what the experience was.
Yeah, so I have one follow-up question because 20, 25 questions in 30 minutes is really intense. And one of the things that, and given that this is such a high stake interview, how did you maintain your calm during this process?
Mm, yeah, I've heard horror stories about this. That's a great question, to be honest. For me specifically, because I had done mocks and I kind of knew that this would be an intense experience, I
Yeah.
kind of had my calm. I knew that the interviewer would cut me off in between. I knew that the interviewer
Mm.
would push me on a certain topic again and again if they feel somewhere I'm struggling. Uh, so I kind of knew that going into this, and then again, it's just you've reached this stage where it's an HBS interview. So beyond this, only one out of two people. So once you have the interview invite, there's a 50% chance of you getting in. So that
Mhm.
statistic is really helpful to calm you down because one in two people will use. So all you have to do is just maybe not mess up. Uh, and then I think what helped me also build in practice was I did 7 mocks. I think a lot of people do a lot of mocks. So doing 7 mocks, some with the people who are already in HBS, some with professional consultants, helped me. And then I had these multiple interview question sets, which went deep into my experience. So I kind of had a fair idea of what to expect. Again, what I had prepared for did not matter at the final interview because the questions were completely different again.
Different. Mhm.
But yeah, I think doing mocks helped me a lot. And also, there's also a faint idea that let's say if you mess up something or if you miss addressing something, you can always put it in the PIR. So that's a great place to have as a backup. Uh, Also, in addition to that, there's also like YouTube videos and ex interview experience videos which help me. So there's a old HBS interviewer called Devi Vallabhaneni, and she has great YouTube videos about what happens, how
Mhm.
you are assessed, and that also helped me build in perspective. And then the final objective I think was just that be calm, be authentic, and that's everything that's matters. That's the only thing that matters.
Yeah, I think you went in with a lot of practice, and that really helped you also maintain that calm, knowing that you'll be cut off in between, and this is how it's going to flow. Could you give some indication of what type of questions were asked? I know you asked a lot of questions around your professional sphere, but just a few questions.
Sure. Uh, I think the first thing which so my start of my career was in manufacturing, where I was a process engineer, then a line leader. So the question started with, okay, paint me a picture of what the manufacturing plant is like. What do the lines look like? How are the people managing it? How was your first day in the manufacturing setting? So that I think I was quite taken aback from that because I did not expect it. And then I started explaining about the plant, about how big it is, how diapers are being produced, what is the line speed, what is a defect in manufacturing. And then I think it went on more into my daily work and more into the manufacturing setup. Um, And then I think moving from manufacturing, we also then touched a few aspects of sustainability, of what my underlying motivation is for sustainability. Why does it matter to me? And then moving on from there to the consumer studies, which I did. And then what she asked me was have like a thorough deep dive into each and every step of every consumer study I've done. Where does an insight come from, and how does that insight then play across your product, across your marketing? And then what does it mean to have a brand's trust? For example, Pampers, it's a baby diaper brand. There's a lot of trust associated with it because it is used with babies. So our consumer is the mom, but our user is the baby. So how does trust play an impact in every consumer study we did? So I think a lot of it was just going very deep into your work, and then deep entrenched in your work, what is the persona you bring out to your daily decisions. So I think that's what the interview was like. Again, I think what I'm seeking is still a very, I think it would be difficult to understand because that depends a lot on what my professional experience has been. But again, we know that they will go deep into your daily work. And it might even be as simple as, if, let's say, if you did a consulting project, then how was your first day like going at the plant? When you were coming out, what were you feeling? And then the impact which you have demonstrated, what do you feel about it? What is the end consumer feeling about it? And what difference has it brought to their life? So all of it is just very deep and very deeply entrenched in your work and the impact it has had.
Yeah, so it looks like multi-stakeholder, your customer being a stakeholder, your internal team being, and
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
have you impacted them as a whole, and how has that changed you in the process, right? As a leader is,
Yes.
and that's super interesting to know. So I know you touched upon the PIR, which is the post-interview reflection, but was there any best practice that you followed, maybe one or two strategies, because it's time constrained and it's right after the interview. So any best
Yeah,
practice
so
that
one
you
tip which I followed, so right after the interview got over, uh, I had a mental note of what the flow of the interview was like. So immediately coming out of the interview, I made a note of all the questions which were asked in the interview. And then after writing all the questions, I knew what all spaces I had probably not very well articulated what was happening. And then I remember there was this one question which was about my international experience. But then how was my manage line in India still running when I was abroad? And then I had
followed?
completely misread that and then said something which was not the right answer. And then I realized it when I was writing the PIR. And then I put that in, and very honestly, that I missed this point and missed articulating it when we were in discussion. And then I wrote about what I felt. So it's okay to miss some things out on because it is difficult to articulate so many things about the past, 8 years of your life in this condensed 30-minute interview. But you can always use your PIR because the interview is not the end, but the PIR is where the process ends.
Yes.
So just have that in mind, and you have to submit the PIR within 24 hours. So get a rough draft, keep on doing edits at it, keep on ensuring that it is tied to your own persona, tied to your authentic self, tied to what you honestly think you missed, what you could have done better. Maybe also highlight something which you weren't able to speak a lot about during the interview, and then just hit submit. So just be authentic and then submit it in 24 hours. So the PIR is, I think, what also made the difference because I'm sure the interview for everyone would not be the ideal interview because it's just so intense. Then the
Yeah.
PIR is what would get you through.
Great. I think that those were some very good strategies, like just have a mental map of what is being discussed, write it down immediately so that after the interview, so that you don't forget those questions, and then have it out within 24 hours, which is the deadline. So very good tips, Anish, you've given there. Let's move to section 6, which is on reflections. And I mean, one of my favorite sections. What did receiving the admit call email feel like?
Oh, it was surreal. I literally cried. I never thought it could actually happen. And it was like the fruit of months of stress and waiting. And
Yeah.
I had always dreamed of the statement. So when you click on the decision letter, there's like confetti which comes in, and the first line is the answer is yes. So I was really like dreaming and kind of manifesting it. I
Nice.
was pure overwhelming relief. I was extremely elated and I was crying. Yeah.
Right. And who was the first person you told about the admit?
So I immediately messaged all of my also like my family WhatsApp group, my closest friends, and even the group I had with Red Pen is messaging you.
Yeah.
So I was also at that time traveling, so I was not at my home where I could actually
Okay.
open the decision with someone. But then I also on video call with a very close friend, and then yeah,
Okay.
opened that result and then immediately shared it across these groups.
Okay. And what trade-offs did this journey really require?
It would take a lot. I think, to be honest, it also because I had a really demanding career with a lot of travel, with a lot of work going on. Uh, Took a lot of my sleep, a lot of my personal time. It was one of the busiest times in my career. I was constantly traveling for work. As I mentioned, I had taken close to 40 flights in between
Okay,
that.
nice.
And then it would just yeah, either affect your sleep or affect how your weekends are spent. Uh, and then I think all of those sacrifices do end up giving you fruit because you would grow out of this process as a better individual, as someone who's introspected. I remember the day before the interview or the final results were coming out. I had made a note in my journal about this process has fundamentally changed how I look at life. So no matter what the
Wow.
result comes tomorrow, I am coming out as a better individual. So it is worth all the stress, all the sleep sacrifices, and all the personal time which you are letting go of. And I think a lot of your friends and your family would understand it. I
Hmm.
know multiple situations where there was the stress of preparing for the interview. There was the stress of would the interview invite even come in. Um so it was just a lot of overwhelming things. And now that I look back, uh, I don't think it would have been better in any other way. Uh, I remember my father also looking at me completely stressed and overthinking, and then asked me, is everything okay? And then just having these discussions, I think also brought me closer to my family. But yeah, it is a taxing process. You would sacrifice a lot of your time.
And but what dreams seem possible today that didn't earlier?
To be honest, I've never been more excited about study. I'm just excited to be part
Okay.
of the HBS family. Uh, so many years back, there was a really interesting lecture which I had found on the Instagram page of HBS Club of India. And then I'd messaged him, hey, how do I join this club? Is it possible to join? And then they had replied back saying this invitation is only for Harvard alumni. So I'm so
Okay.
glad now that I can be part of this club. But think yeah, super excited to hang out with Harvard alumni, being a part of this family. There's a lot of great people who have done this experience, and everyone's super inviting and welcoming, and actually have very stellar profiles. So uh, I think now that I'm part of this ecosystem, and now I'm looking at what people have done after graduating is just really tremendous. And it would be great to even so approaching an alumni, approaching anyone for help, even attending the HBS Club of India lectures.
Yeah.
I'm just super excited for it. I never thought it could be possible. Think so this lecture which was being hosted was I guess back in 2022 or 23. So it's like 4 years back. And then now that I am actually going to Boston, studying at Harvard. Just super excited about it.
Wow. And I had this question. In your opinion, I know AdCom would look at it the way they have to, but in your opinion, what is that one spike factor, or what is that one thing that you think made it to Howard?
Uh, So bringing out the uniqueness. For me, what mattered the most to me, I think let me address the baseline first. Because I think a good undergrad, a good
Hmm.
GMAT score, uh, a good GPA in your undergrad, and then having maybe a company like P&G. Then what was the spike for me is I was the first Indian hire for the Pampers brand in R&D,
Hmm.
and the rest of my team was in Singapore. So there was a lot more difficulty in me managing my work because this was the first time someone was doing it. And then That's what I think. That's why my experiences were so much more richer, and
Hmm.
because this path was not taken before. So I think that uniqueness came from my professional experience. That was my spike, I think.
Great. So let's move to rapid fire, one word or one sentence
Hmm.
answers, and it's all right if you want to make it longer. It's totally fine. So one word that describes your MBA journey and why.
Uh, Introspection, because I never really had sat down and thought about
Yeah.
why something had happened. This is inherent motivation or this desire to do something, and then that shows in your professional journey. And then looking back at it what made all the difference. So introspection would be the answer. Yeah.
Okay. And biggest myth about MBA admissions.
Yeah, as you spoke about, like molding yourself into the perfect candidate rather than
Okay.
being authentic. So I would
Okay.
encourage everyone to be as authentic as they can be.
Authentic as possible. Okay. One thing applicants worry about too much.
Over-optimizing their GMAT. This is something which
Hmm.
I had or myself gone through. That's also why I had kind of kept on pushing the GMAT away because I did not
Hmm.
want to give it, maybe then be disappointed and then give it back again. So
Hmm.
over-optimizing your test is something which I felt was, yeah, I worried about it too much when it did not have to be worried about too much.
Okay. Most underrated part of the application.
Um, think my post-interview reflection, and it,
Hmm.
yeah, my HBS post-interview reflection, mostly because it helped me kind of complete the whole interview, as in um, the entire interview experience was closed through the PIR because that is
Right.
what I could bring out and what I think the AdCom committee wanted to know about me. So yeah, I would say that, yeah.
One quality which top schools truly value.
Um, think throughout my career, I have had this ownership of sorts, and then even when I'm not in the role, having that ownership because it affects like people's lives. So I guess extreme ownership is what they truly value.
Right. One thing you wish you knew earlier.
Oh, uh, I think you can back me up on this. Doing things the last minute is not a good thing. It's a recipe
Oh,
for
yeah.
disaster.
We had like a
And
30-minute conversation on that. So yeah. Yeah.
I think there was this moment. So HBS, as you had also spoken a bit about earlier, was kind of like the my only focus was like HBS, and that's what
Yes,
I
yes.
spent most of my time on. And then 2 hours before the HBS result was the Kellogg result, and I was rejected from Kellogg. So it was like those 2 hours were like extremely bad. And then I
Right.
was just overthinking and then regretting why I did everything the last minute and uh, why I am the way I am and did not like myself for it. So
Mhm.
yeah, you don't do things last minute is what I would recommend everyone.
Yeah. One book, podcast, or resource that really helped you. I know you mentioned about the interview. Anything else besides that?
Yeah. Yeah, so I think the YouTube videos of Devi Vallabhaneni and I think other YouTube videos as well.
Hmm.
She's really great at explaining what the process is like. And I
Hmm.
think the Harbus guide is also a great way to look at the past interviews. That helped me understand what is expected, understand what exactly you would also be asked in the interview. So having this past study, that's really helpful.
Right. Coffee chats or rankings, what according to you matter most?
I would definitely coffee sites. I think I spoke about this a bit before as
Yes.
well. And connect with as
Yes.
many alumni as you can. go through their lived experiences because that's what is the reality.
Right. Hardest part of the process in one word.
Hardest part was, I think, the mental endurance which you need to go through
Yeah.
this,
Yeah.
right from the starting of your exam prep. So even during GMAT, I'm sure everyone is handling a very demanding career. Then sitting down every night, doing those practice sums, getting the score, starting the application process, working on uh, your experiences, on your resume, on your uh, essays through a demanding job. And then moving on to that and then moving on to the interview prep from there, doing these preps late at night with people maybe who are in the US, and then also maybe with some other seniors, then from there, the worst wait comes when once the interview is done and you're just waiting for the results. There's nothing now in your hand. And then, yeah, and then people have different ways to do a thing. Or I think I also knew that it is out of my hands, so it should also be out of my mind. But it definitely was not
Yeah.
out of my mind. So having that mental endurance was what was always challenging. I think each and every tough moment, I really wished I had a bit more endurance, and then taking it in, soaking it in. Yeah, this is what it's supposed to be like, was what took me through.
Right.
But no, going into this process that it'll be uh, a taxing few months, and then your endurance will get you through.
Right. Anish, it was so good chatting with you, and I am sure that the tips that you've shared would really help somebody who is viewing this and wanting to go to HBS. So all the very best for the journey ahead, and I wish you all the luck. Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Thank you, Anish. Thank
Thank
you
you
for your
so much,
time.
Kunjan.
Thank you. Bye.